Yeah, wire brush on the grinder. Hi people, so it's been a while. It's been really cold and I haven't done anything for weeks and weeks and weeks, but today I've got an hour or so and I'm going to have a go at stripping the paint off the bonnet. Very exciting, but yeah, it's been really no good for painting, so I've just been working through finishing some body parts. And let me just flip this around so I can show you what I'm dealing with. So here's the bonnet. You can probably see the colour a bit better than normally. It's really nice actually. This is the Melmo green, which is a very light green. It's a classic colour. I really like it. When the car's all polished up, it looks really great. So I am going to go with that same colour again. Last time I gave it a coat of paint, I did this pinstripe in the middle, which I quite like, but I'm going to take it all back to bare metal because this time I'm probably going to do a 2K solid finish. So I want to get anything that's under there that's nasty off. And also there's a dent, you can see here. A tree branch fell on the car just after I finished it last time. So I've got to get that back and put a bit of filler in there and clean that up. So yes, I've got my orbital sander with some 80 grit and connected to my vacuum cleaner to suck up all the dust, and we're going to strip this off. Underneath it's pretty dirty and greasy, and I'll probably end up blasting that with my water blaster, sandblaster, but I don't want to do the water blasting on this because it just takes ages to get off. It really is for getting into small nooks and crannies and that sort of thing, so let's get the paint off this first.
Sometimes I just get tired of thinking of all the things that I don't want to do, all the things that I don't want to be.
One stripped bonnet. Had a tiny few little rust spots on it, which I've gotten off there with the wire wheel on the grinder, but it's pretty good. Next step is to blast the underside and get that all clean, but and then I'll give it a coat of epoxy and then some spray filler and get it all completely flat, and then an epoxy to seal it. So it should be nice. Of course I'm still working on the Mini. Yeah, actually my first day off in about a month, so and my first couple of hours of work on the car in ages. What have I been doing? I had a dent here that I got back to bare metal and then used my slapping file to get out, and it's perfect, I think. We'll see. We won't know until you put the final paint on, but that is coming together. I had to strip all the old paint off down here, which I've done, and then obviously this is where I've lead filled around here, cleaned it up, looks really nice. Pretty happy with that. What else have we got going on? Yeah, stripped off all the paint around the grill area, and underneath it always had a big hole in the access port here to the suspension, and on the other side as well. So I basically had to use a pulling tool. It's really badly ripped. Use a pulling tool and then weld it up and then grind it off, and then I'll put some, once the primer is dry, I'll put some light filler, skim filler in there to clean it up. So that always needs to be done. I've then poured some seam sealer all the way along here where the lip of the bumper bar is, because that tends to rust quite badly underneath. So I've poured that in there, and that'll seal that up. Giving this a little bit of a spray across the top here. It was back to bare metal as well. So making some progress. Also headlight bowl back to bare metal, sprayed it with some rust converter just to get any of the pitting, and then when that's done I'll give it a spray with some epoxy black anti-rust spray. Underneath, so this is my exhaust. It's a stainless steel exhaust. Sounds really good. I've had to attach that, so I've made up a bracket there which goes onto the suspension bracket underneath like that to hold it in place so it doesn't rattle around anymore. And here's the fuel line that runs to the front of the car, which is all new as well, and sort of bends around like that and will go to the fuel tank. And yes, it's the underside. Yeah, wire brush on the grinder. We've really got to stop meeting this way. Ouch! I had my gloves on, but it went, straight through my glove as well. So this is what I've been working on here. This is the right-hand side. I've scraped this all back using a wire wheel on a grinder, and then I actually sprayed some rust converter in there, let it dry, and then scraped off all the outside and cleaned it all off again, just to make sure that any of the rust that's happening inside there gets converted to basically no more rust. And on the inside here, I'll seal the seams properly as well. But my next step now is to actually lead load it. And again, I'm going to keep the seam because I want it to look original. But it's basically just to bridge the gap between the two panels, and the lead also will flex a little bit as well. If I just fill it in with putty, it will actually crack and not a really good sealer. So I'm going to go with lead. So my next step now is to put some, make sure it's super clean, then put some flux paste on, heat it up, wipe it, and then just sort of fill it in with my lead stick if there's any gaps in it. So there's my flux paste on, and now I'm going to heat it up till it goes brown and then wipe it back so it will take the solder. There we go. You can see I've got a little bit here that I can just heat up and wipe, but really all the way along now it's pretty much sealed with lead. I'll just go over it and make sure any of the little tiny bits are filled in, but yeah, it's a nice clean seal now. Stripping paint off the fender back to bare metal, and this is why, if you look close, you can see the original black anti-rust coating, then a red primer, and then next primer on top, the original paint color, and then a few years ago I did putty over the top, which I shouldn't have done, but anyway, putty over the top, and then primer, and then my final coat. So I'm getting off all of those layers back to bare metal, and I'll put on things in the right order this time. So an etch primer, and then a sealer primer, some putty just to get it straight, another seal over the top of the whole thing, and then my final coats, and I'll do a lot more thicker coats, maybe 3 or 4 coats. So that's why I'm having to get it back. So that's Moon, the big fat cat. It's been out here helping me with the car. Not much. You can see now I've stripped off all of the paint from the fender. I just used some 80 grit paper on my sander and a wire wheel on my grinder. Healing okay. Yes. So it's very tedious, this part, but getting in all the nooks and crannies and just getting all the little bits of paint off so I can give it a good coat of some etch primer and fill in all the little bits of nasties. So that's where I'm at, and obviously the front as well. One thing I do have to do, another little bit of welding here. I'm just going to put a tiny little strip of strengthening metal across there and just tack weld that in place, because that is what used to be there before I replaced the A panels. Also, looking at this, I can sort of feel there's some slight dents on the edge where I tapped it in a bit too vigorously, so I'm going to put some fiberglass putty or stainless steel putty on there just to get it nice and smooth. So a few more little bits and pieces like that to do. It's like Arctic frost today, it's so cold. It's wind chill factor of 0 outside, and that's really cold for this part of Australia. So it's a day of keeping the door closed because it's just too cold and wet out there. So that's where I'm at. Today is the day for sandblasting the bonnet. So I've got my sand up here, which is just kiln dried sand, going into my pressure washer, and I'm going to be running this on hot water. So it's about 60 degrees or so, and that's just going to allow the whole thing to dry a bit faster. So as soon as I've blasted this, I'm going to put it in front of the heater just to dry it all off, blast it off with some air and then dry it all off, and then I'll epoxy coat the whole thing, both sides. Join me next time to hear me say, I've got the runs.